Somewhere in the city of Cleveland, there is a silver Nissan Sentra that people are still looking for. Not a person, at first, a car. Because on the morning of June 26, 2021, that car was seen twice. The first time, a young woman was inside it. The second time, roughly 4 hours later, she was gone, and the car itself had changed. 2 bullet holes had appeared, one punched through the roof and one through the rear passenger door. The hubcaps were gone. The license plate had been stripped off, and where it should have been, someone had propped a cardboard dealer tag in the rear window. Behind the wheel was a man. In the passenger seat, where the young woman had last been seen, there was no one. The car drove west and disappeared into the city. It has never been recovered. Neither has she. Her name was Rajah McQueen. She was 27 years old. She was a mother of 2. And in the span of a single morning, on ordinary streets in the neighborhood where her family had roots, she vanished so completely that 4 years later, the men leading the search would say out loud what they had come to believe, that Rajah did not walk away from her life, that something happened to her, and that someone out there, driving those same streets, still knows exactly what. This is the story of a case that began as a missing persons report and became something colder and heavier, a death investigation without a body, a crime scene that drove away on 4 wheels, and a family that buried a mother still waiting for her daughter to come home. Before we walk this trail, I want to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. Someone watching right now might live in Cleveland, might know these streets, might remember a silver Nissan Sentra parked somewhere it shouldn't have been in the summer of 2021. That person might be the reason this trail finally warms. To understand what was lost that morning, you have to start long before the gas station, long before the cameras. You have to start with who Rajah was. Rajah McQueen was born on March 21, 1994. She grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, tied to the city's east side, the neighborhoods that would, years later, become the geography of the search for her. According to reports on the case, she was the youngest of 6 girls, the baby of a large family of sisters, and by every account from the people who loved her, she carried herself like it. One of her sisters, Shamir McQueen, would later describe her in the simplest and most human terms. She called Rajah bubbly, sweet, very energetic. She called her just the ball of light. Those aren't the words of a case file. They're the words of a sister trying to make a stranger understand what the world lost. By the summer of 2021, Rajah was 27 and building something. She had 2 young sons, boys who are teenagers now, boys who reportedly still hold on to the hope that their mother will one day walk back through the door. She had attended Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, where she had studied psychology. And in 2021, she had taken a new step, one that said a great deal about where she thought her life was heading. She had enrolled at Rosedale Bible College, a small school in Rosedale, Ohio, to study music and theology. That detail matters, because it cuts against the shape that some strangers might otherwise assume about a case like this. Rajah was not drifting. She was a mother pursuing a degree in music and faith. That June, she had simply come home for the summer break, back to Cleveland, back to her family, back to the east side she knew. She was between semesters, home for the season, close to the people who knew her best. She was, in other words, exactly where she was supposed to be. She was also, by the descriptions circulated on her missing person profiles, easy to recognize. Rajah stood 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed around 133 pounds. She had black hair, worn that summer in shoulder-length extensions, and dark eyes. Her body carried a kind of personal history in ink, a half-sleeve tattoo on her upper arm, a butterfly on her chest, a rose on her leg above the knee, and on the inside of her wrist, in red, a name and a date. Her nose and ears were pierced. These are the details that end up on a flyer. But before they were identifiers on a poster, they were simply Rajah, a young woman who had chosen each of them, who had a face her sisters would know anywhere. The last conversation Shamir McQueen had with her sister was ordinary. That is the part that still haunts the family. Not that it was dramatic, but that it wasn't. Rajah told her she was heading out. In Shamir's memory of it, Rajah said she was about to go with her friend and that she would call later. Shamir told her to be careful. She told her she loved her. And Rajah said, okay, that was it. That was the last of it. Now that you know who Rajah McQueen was, a mother, a student, the youngest of 6 sisters, the one they called the Ball of Light, does she remind you of someone in your own life? A sister, a friend, a daughter home for the summer? Tell me in the comments. The families in cases like this one say the same thing over and over. The worst thing is being forgotten. Keeping Rajah's name alive is something every single person watching can do right now. The morning of June 26, 2021, began early. According to the FBI Cleveland Violent Crime Task Force and the Cleveland Division of Police, Rajah McQueen was last seen at approximately 7:30 that morning in the area of East 131st Street and Harvard Avenue on Cleveland's east side, at a busy gas station in a part of the city she knew well. She was there with her car, a silver 2018 Nissan Sentra Ohio license plate JGH 3953. And here the accounts add a detail that would come to define the entire investigation. Rajah was not the one driving. According to case summaries, and to her own family, surveillance from that morning showed Rajah in the passenger seat of her own car, while a man sat behind the wheel. Her sister, according to reports on the case, recognized that man. At the time, investigators did not release his name publicly, so the last confirmed image of Rajah McQueen alive is this: a young woman in the passenger seat of her own silver Sentra at a gas station on Harvard Avenue at 7:30 on a summer morning with someone she knew driving her away. The most ordinary scene imaginable, a car pulling out of a gas station. Thousands of them do it every hour in a city like Cleveland. Then came the gap, and it is inside that gap, the hours after 7:30 a.m., that whatever happened to Rajah McQueen happened. No verified public account fills those hours minute by minute, and this channel will not invent what the record does not hold. What is documented is the beginning of the morning and its end, and the end is where the case turns from unsettling to something far darker. Roughly 4 hours later, at around 11:40 that same morning, city surveillance cameras picked up Rajah's silver Nissan Sentra again. It was moving west, in the area of Broadway and Union Avenue, a different part of the east side, miles from that gas station. And in the 4 hours since the cameras had last seen it, the car had been transformed. There were now 2 bullet holes in it. This is the FBI's own description, one in the roof and one in the rear passenger door. The hubcaps had been removed. The license plate, JGH 3953, was gone entirely. And in the rear window, someone had placed a dealer plate, the kind of temporary cardboard tag you'd expect on a car fresh off a lot. Except this one appears to have been there to hide what the car really was. A man was driving. Rajah was not inside. Sit with the physical reality of that for a moment, because the investigation would come to hinge on it. In the space of 4 hours, on a weekday morning in a major American city, Rajah McQueen's car went from carrying her in the passenger seat to being shot, stripped of its identifying marks, disguised with a fake plate, and driven by someone else, with Rajah nowhere to be seen. Cars don't get bullet holes in the roof by accident. Plates and hubcaps don't remove themselves. Someone, in those 4 hours, was working very deliberately to change what that car was and to make it disappear. And then it did. After that 11:40 sighting, the silver Sentra drove out of frame and out of the city's cameras. It has never been seen again. To this day, the vehicle has never been recovered. No small thing, because in this case, the car is not just a car. It may be the single most important piece of physical evidence in the entire investigation. Wherever it went, it may have taken the answer with it. When Rajah didn't come home and didn't call, her family knew immediately that something was wrong. This was not a woman who went quiet. She talked to her family constantly. She had 2 little boys. The silence itself was the alarm. Her loved ones reported her missing, and from the very start, they pushed. Rajah's cousin, Alicia Kirkland, became one of the family's public voices, and within weeks, She was telling local media that there was something suspicious about the disappearance, that this did not feel like a woman who had chosen to leave. The family didn't wait for the case to gain traction on its own. According to Kirkland, they marched, they put up flyers, they got the word out. She would later describe those early weeks as overwhelming in the best way. Calls coming in every single day, so many people wanting to help that it was hard to keep up with all of them. The police were really active, she recalled. We were marching, we were putting up flyers. The case landed with Cleveland missing persons detective Kevin Callahan, who has worked Rajah's file from the day the report was filed. And this was not treated as a routine adult who might turn up on her own. The Cleveland Division of Police brought in the FBI, specifically the FBI Cleveland Violent Crime Task Force, to work the case alongside them. That partnership tells you how investigators read the situation from early on. Violent crime task forces do not attach themselves to voluntary disappearances. The search was extensive. According to reports on the case, investigators used resources in the air as well as on the ground. A helicopter and a drone were reportedly deployed at points in the effort to find Rajah or her car. And on the ground, the work was old-fashioned and relentless. According to published reports, on April 15, 2022, the FBI and local police went door to door in the neighborhoods tied to the case, canvassing, knocking, asking. Callahan was direct about why. Investigators believed that somebody in those specific areas had seen something, maybe Rajah's car parked on a street where it didn't belong, back in June of the year before. The whole strategy rested on a conviction that the answer was local, that it was close, that it was sitting inside someone's memory in one of those neighborhoods. The evidence they did have was, in some ways, extraordinarily specific for a missing persons case, and in other ways, maddeningly incomplete. They had the surveillance footage, Rajah in the passenger seat at 7:30, the transformed car at 11:40. In May 2022, Cleveland police took the significant step of releasing that city surveillance footage publicly, showing the last time Rajah was spotted entering her car at the gas station, and then, hours later, that same car heading west on Harvard, driven by a man, with visible bullet holes, and no Rajah. And they had the driver. This is a point that the family emphasized repeatedly in those first years, and it is one of the most striking features of the case. The man seen driving Rajah's damaged car was not a mystery to investigators. He had been identified. He had been interviewed by police. Rajah's family and the police both knew who he was, but for years, authorities declined to release any information about him publicly. Not his name, not the substance of his interview, not what he told them about where Rajah was or what had happened to her car. The family also pointed to one more detail, one they found deeply telling. According to Rajah's relatives and to reports on the case, Rajah disappeared with her cell phone, and that phone appears to have been manually turned off. Her phone records and her social media went dark the day she vanished, and never lit up again. Not a call, not a post, not a login. For a young mother who was in constant contact with her family, that total digital silence was, to the people who knew her, its own kind of evidence. It should be noted that this cell phone detail has circulated primarily through the family and case reporting rather than as publicly presented court evidence. But for the McQueens, it confirmed what they already felt in their bones. Rajah had not chosen to disappear. Someone had made her disappear. For a while, the momentum felt real. Detective Callahan, more than 400 days into the case in the fall of 2022, pushed back on the word that families in these situations come to dread. He insisted the case was not cold. "We're putting all the pieces together, and we're close," he said. "I feel like we're close. I feel like we're getting much closer to where we need to be." He said the FBI was actively assisting, that fresh eyes were being brought to the file. There was a reason, he suggested, that things were moving carefully rather than quickly. As he put it, he wanted to move as fast as he could, so the family could have an answer, but investigators also didn't want to jeopardize anything if the case eventually led to a prosecution. That last phrase is worth holding on to. As early as 2022, the people working this case were already thinking not just about finding Rajah, but about someday charging someone for what happened to her. And yet, month after month, year after year, the resolution didn't come. The hardest question in this case is not who drove the car. Investigators would eventually make clear they believe they know that. The hardest question is why. Knowing so much, they have not been able to close it. And the answer lives in the specific ways this case resisted being solved. Start with the thing that should have been the key, that unlocked everything, and instead became the case's greatest void, the car itself. Rajah's silver Nissan Sentra is, in effect, a rolling crime scene. It carried her. It was shot. It was stripped and disguised. If investigators could put their hands on that vehicle, it could potentially tell them an enormous amount about what happened inside it, about who was in it, about where it had been. But the car vanished after 11:40 that morning and has never resurfaced. Investigators have come to believe it may have changed hands several times in the years since, or ended up in a chop shop, dismantled, its parts scattered, its identity erased on purpose. A car turned into pieces is a case turned into pieces. Every year the vehicle stays gone. The physical evidence it might hold degrades, disperses, disappears. Then there is the absence at the center of it all. There is no body. Rajah has never been found. And a death investigation without a body is one of the hardest things in all of criminal work. Without a recovered victim, there is no autopsy, no forensic scene, no physical confirmation of how, or when, or where she died. Investigators can build a case around that absence, but it makes every step heavier, every conclusion harder to prove to the standard a courtroom demands. And then there is the wall that Callahan and the FBI have run into again and again. Not a lack of evidence, but a lack of the one thing evidence can't manufacture: someone willing to talk. The investigators on this case have been unusually blunt about this. They have said, repeatedly, that they believe someone out there knows what happened. The FBI's Special Agent Andrew Burke put it plainly. There is no question in this case that somebody has information. The frustration in that statement is the frustration of the entire investigation. This is not a whodunit where the trail simply went cold and no one has any idea. This is a case where the people in charge believe the knowledge exists, in someone's memory, in someone's silence, and cannot pry it loose. The family felt that stall in their own way, and Alicia Kirkland gave voice to a suspicion that many families in similar cases carry. She wondered aloud why some cases command the spotlight while others struggle for attention. Sometimes it's not a race thing, she said. It's a class thing. Whether or not that is the reason, the effect was real. The case needed more publicity, more resources, more eyes, and the family often felt they were fighting to keep Rajah's name from slipping beneath the surface of a city with too many open wounds. Kirkland described the emotional toll with painful honesty, the way hope gets a little shaken, the way waiting for answers that never come changes people. By the time the case passed its second anniversary in 2023, the official word from the FBI was that there were no updates, but that investigators were not giving up, and that, in their words, now is the time to step up for anyone who knew anything. The reward, first announced by the FBI in April 2022 at $25,000 for information leading to Rajah or her missing car, was later raised, through the FBI and Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County, to as much as $30,000. Money on the table, cameras rolling, a detective who refused to call it cold, and still, silence. You've now seen everything the investigators had, and everywhere they hit the wall, a car that turned into a ghost, a victim never found, a driver they identified but couldn't crack, and a neighborhood full of people who may hold the answer and won't say it. Before I walk you through what investigators eventually revealed and the theories that surround this case, I want your read on it. Knowing what you now know, what do you think happened to Rajah McQueen in those 4 hours? Drop your theory in the comments before we go further. For years, the public version of this case had a hole in the middle of it shaped like a question. Who was the man driving Rajah's car, and what was his connection to her? In June of 2025, on the 4th anniversary of Rajah's disappearance, Cleveland police and the FBI answered part of that question in a way they never had before, and in doing so, they changed the entire public understanding of the case. First, they confirmed what the evidence had long implied. This was no longer a missing persons case. It had become a death investigation. Detective Callahan said, in the plainest possible language, that they did not believe Rajah was still alive. He explained the reasoning the way anyone who knew Rajah would understand it. This was a woman who talked to her family all the time, a woman with children. For her to go missing for 4 years with absolutely no contact with anyone, as he said, it doesn't look good. Special Agent Burke framed it as a shift in mission. The investigation, he said, had reached the point where they were trying to uncover exactly what happened to her, because they knew that something did. Then investigators went further than they ever had. They named 2 persons of interest, publicly, for the first time. The first was Rajah's boyfriend, a man named Stan Williams. The second was his brother, Sloan Mitchell. Callahan chose his words carefully, the way investigators must when no one has been charged. These were people, he said, that they had talked to, but also people they could say with confidence were certainly persons of interest in the case. It is important to be precise here, and this channel will be. A person of interest is not a defendant. No one has been charged with any crime in connection with Rajah McQueen's disappearance. Both men are, in the eyes of the law, exactly what the term says, persons of interest, and nothing more. But investigators did attach specific claims to those names. According to Detective Callahan, the man captured on surveillance driving Rajah's damaged car that morning, the man behind the wheel of the silver Sentra, with the bullet holes and the fake plate, was Stan Williams. That is the boyfriend, Callahan said. There's no question in regards to that. And according to investigators, when that car drove away, it was being followed by a second vehicle, one they say was being driven by Williams's brother, Sloan Mitchell. Inside that second car with Mitchell, investigators said, was a third person, someone they have still not been able to identify, and someone they have publicly pleaded for help identifying. For his part, Williams spoke to 19 News by phone and denied having anything to do with Rajah's disappearance. He said he could not recall the last time he saw his girlfriend, attributing the haze to how long ago it was and to alcohol and intoxication. When asked why he thought investigators were calling him a person of interest, his answer was almost startlingly casual. It was probably, he said, because he was one of the last people kicking it with her. Asked what happened to Rajah's car, he said he had no idea. He suggested maybe someone else had been driving it that day. He said he'd had a good time and gone home. And he said more than once that he hoped they would find her safely. Investigators also shared what Williams had told them about the morning itself. According to Callahan, Williams claimed he had dropped Rajah off at a gas station in the Broadway and Union area, but investigators made clear they were not sure that account was true. And here it's worth noting a detail the record surfaces about the 2 men's backgrounds, uncovered by journalists digging through court files. Reporting on the case found that Williams had multiple unrelated felony convictions, including drug trafficking and weapons offenses, and that Mitchell also had drug-related convictions. Those are unrelated cases. They are not evidence of what happened to Rajah, but they are part of the public record that the reporting brought to light. So what are the theories that this evidence supports? Let's walk through them fairly, and let's be clear about what each one can and cannot explain. The first and most prominent theory is the one that investigators' own statements point toward, that Rajah was the victim of a violent crime that morning, and that the people responsible were close to her. This theory follows the physical evidence in a straight line. Rajah is seen in the passenger seat of her own car, driven by a man she knew. Hours later, the car reappears shot, stripped, and disguised, without her, driven by that same man and followed by a second vehicle. Under this theory, the transformation of the car, the bullet holes, the removed plates, the fake dealer tag, was an attempt to erase evidence and hide the vehicle, and by extension, to hide what happened to Rajah. The total digital silence of her phone, manually switched off and never used again, fits this reading. So does the 4-year absence of any contact with the children and family she adored. It is the theory that best explains the greatest number of facts and it is, in effect, the direction investigators have signaled with their own words and their naming of persons of interest. That's the leading theory, and the evidence for it is substantial. But here is the problem that keeps it from being a closed case. After 4+ years, investigators still do not have Rajah's body. They still do not have her car, and they still have not identified the third person they say was in that second vehicle. A theory, no matter how strong, is not a conviction, and the men named remain persons of interest whom no prosecutor has charged. Does that missing piece change how confident you feel? Tell me in the comments which way you're leaning and what you think that third person knows. There is a second theory, and it deserves to be presented honestly rather than dismissed. The possibility that the truth is more tangled than a single act by a single person. This theory takes seriously the involvement of more than one vehicle and more than one person. Investigators themselves described a second car and an unidentified third individual. That opens the door to the possibility that whatever happened to Rajah was not the impulsive act of one man, but something involving multiple people, coordinated or chaotic, with the car's disappearance, possibly into a chop shop, possibly through several sets of hands, serving as a deliberate group effort to bury the evidence. Under this reading, the reason the case has been so hard to break is not just that one person is staying silent, but that the knowledge is spread across a small circle of people, each with a reason not to talk, and at least one of whom investigators still cannot even name. It's a theory that explains the investigative wall as well as the crime. And there is a third possibility that any honest account has to acknowledge, even as the evidence weighs heavily against it, that some element of the public story is incomplete or misremembered, and that the full sequence of that morning has not yet been established to the certainty a courtroom requires. Williams offered an alternative, that he dropped Rajah off, that maybe someone else drove her car. Investigators say they doubt it. But until there is a recovered vehicle, a recovered victim, or a charge that survives the scrutiny of a trial, the case technically remains open, and the standard of proof remains unmet. This is not the same as saying the leading theory is wrong. It is simply the discipline this case demands. No one has been charged, and the questions that would be answered by physical evidence, the car and Rajah herself, remain unanswered. What no credible theory does is suggest Rajah left on her own. Every serious reading of this case, from her family to the FBI, rejects that. The bullet holes reject it. The stripped plates reject it. The silent phone rejects it. The 4 years of nothing reject it. Whatever the exact mechanism, the evidence points overwhelmingly to a young woman who did not choose to vanish. This trail has now been cold for 5 years. 5 summers have passed since Rajah got into her car at that gas station. But cold cases do get solved, sometimes after 5 years, sometimes after 25. The right tip, the right person finally deciding to speak, a car surfacing in a place no one expected. If you've ever followed a case that finally cracked open after everyone had lost hope, tell me about it in the comments. Those stories are not just interesting, they are the exact reason a family like Rajah McQueen's keeps holding on. Which brings us to where the trail stands today, and to the human cost that has stacked up in the years of waiting. As of the most recent developments, the case remains open and unsolved. In June 2025, investigators publicly named Stan Williams and Sloan Mitchell as persons of interest and confirmed the case as a death investigation. In the year that followed, on the 5th anniversary in June 2026, Cleveland police issued a statement making clear the case is far from abandoned. They said that in collaboration with their law enforcement partners, they continue to actively investigate the case involving Rajah, that while there were no new developments to report at that time, their commitment to seeking answers for Rajah's family remained unwavering. They said their investigators maintain regular communication with the family and remain dedicated to pursuing every available lead. And they made the plea that runs through this entire case like a thread. They encouraged anyone with information, no matter how significant or insignificant it might seem, to come forward, because even the smallest detail could prove valuable. The FBI's Special Agent Burke had put the same idea in more urgent terms. They believe they have a great deal of evidence about what happened and when it happened. What they need, he said, is that last key. But 5 years is a long time to wait for a key that hasn't turned. And in that time, this case has taken something from the family that can never be given back. Rajah's mother died on February 5th, without ever learning what happened to her daughter. Her sister Shamir spoke about it with a rawness that needs no embellishment. Their mother, she said, passed away not knowing where her child was, and she called that, simply, torture. Somewhere in the accounting of this case, alongside the missing car and the missing woman, you have to place a mother who went to her grave, still searching for her daughter. That is part of the cost of the silence. That is part of what the person who knows something has helped to cause. Rajah's 2 sons are teenagers now. They were little boys when their mother got into that car. They have grown up in the gap she left behind. And according to their family, they still hold on to the hope that she will come home. A hope that grows harder to carry with every passing year, and that no child should have to carry at all. Rajah McQueen has said that at this point, she isn't even sure the word closure fits anymore. What she wants, she said, is justice. She has asked, plainly, for anyone who knows something to speak up, and that is the entire case, distilled to a single request. This is not a mystery with no witnesses. Investigators have said, again and again, in their own words, that they believe someone knows exactly what happened to Rajah McQueen. They have named who they consider persons of interest. They have described a second car and pleaded to identify a third person inside it. They have offered a reward of up to $30,000 through the FBI and Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County, a reward you can collect anonymously. The only missing piece is a voice. If you have any information about the disappearance of Rajah Adriana McQueen or about a silver 2018 Nissan Sentra Ohio plate JGH 3953 that changed hands or was taken apart in the Cleveland area in the summer of 2021 or after, you can contact the FBI Cleveland tip line at 216-583-4385 or submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. You can reach Detective Kevin Callahan of the Cleveland Division of Police directly at 216-623-7697. You can remain anonymous, and you can still collect the reward. Rajah Adriana McQueen was the youngest of 6 sisters. She was a mother of 2 boys who are still waiting for her. She was a student of music and theology, home for the summer, who called her sister that morning and said she'd call back later. She was, in her sister's words, the ball of light. She deserved to finish that degree. She deserved to raise her sons. She deserved to grow old and to be there when her own mother died, instead of the other way around. She deserved so much more than 4 hours on a June morning and a car that drove away without her. Somewhere in America, this trail is still cold, but someone out there remembers something. If that someone is you, make the call.